What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia, another pod. What's going on in pop culture right now? Had to get into a bunch of stuff, including the 2024 Oscar nominations. They're out. There's some snubs. There's some surprises. Went through all of that. Of course, also had to talk about Fargo Season 5 wrapping up on FX on Hulu. I caught up on Marvel's Echo season out in full on Disney+. Also, 2 movies. I.S.S, this new sci-fi thriller with Ariana DeBose, Fallen Leaves, the new Finnish tragicomedy film from Aki Kaurismäki, and also a little guy named Pete Davidson dropped his second Netflix stand-up comedy special, Turbo Fonzarelli. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below for the best of 2024 Spotify playlist, my favorite songs of the week, updated weekly. Let me know what's good and let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Pete Davidson's third stand-up comedy special, Turbo Fonzarelli. Pete Davidson back, new special on Netflix. His first special since Alive from New York came out right before the pandemic, out on Netflix early 2020. So it's been a while for Pete in the traditional special space. Of course, we know Pete Davidson is out here. He's always in the news, usually for tabloid reasons, but Pete Davidson is frankly one of the most famous stand-up comedians alive right now. I think that's kind of obvious, and despite all the fact that he's usually more famous for other reasons than his stand-up comedy, I think he's never at any time been held up as like this amazing comic, despite the fact that I think he performs semi-regularly. He's done a lot of in tandem stuff with his buddy John Mulaney, that's for sure. And if anything, I think some of the funniest stuff I've seen from him is when he's made fun of himself at his own expense. I think just this past year, the I'm Just Pete riff off I'm Just Ken from Barbie on SNL, Pete's return to SNL post leaving the show, I thought that was incredibly clever and witty and really fun. Seeing a new special from Pete, I was curious if there would be signs of, growth on that traditional front. He's never been one to, I think, stick to like a lot of structure or form when it comes to shaping a stand-up special. This time around, there were some callbacks, but generally speaking, it's kind of more of what the vibe has previously been with Pete, which is both good and bad, I guess you could say. Like, I think generally I find him as a funny guy just because I think his general persona and presence is just kind of amusing and charming to me. Now, that's kind of in contrast to I think his general special, his special creation, his general, joke writing, which ultimately is pretty basic. It's pretty simple. He's not like the cleverest guy. He's not the most intricate weaver of webs to tell you a joke in the special. He kind of does down the middle stuff, and in this case, some of that's like, kind of juvenile stuff, a little toilet humor at times. And yeah, he still makes me laugh. Sometimes like a really hard chuckle from time to time, especially with this special. But nothing, I think, with Turbo Fonzarelli really stands out beyond what he has previously done. And like I said, that's both good and bad. Looking ahead, I'm actually kind of excited about this new movie he has coming out called Wizards from A24, co-starring with Franz Rogowski. That I think has some potential, probably going to premiere at South by Southwest earlier this year, but like this past year he had the comedy special or comedy series Bupkis premiere on Peacock. I don't think that made too much noise, right? But getting to the special itself, talking about him recently turning 30, and it's a lot of like referential stuff about his life, right? His drug use, using ketamine while being high on ketamine while at Aretha Franklin's funeral, which he did attend. That's like a real anecdote, evidently. That made some news. That was a headline out of this special, right? Kind of amusing just for its forthrightness. Of course, he was there as a companion to Ariana Grande, who was, really attending the funeral as, anyway. Yeah, that stuff was kind of fun. I guess like the, melatonin joke about melatonin from an Italian, I thought was kind of funny. Him talking about his mom actually is probably some of the best stuff here. It's definitely crass, talking about his mom wanting a facelift, his mom having not having been laid in 20 years. I guess that's kind of a fun callback to, his last special, a lot of stuff in that was about his dad, who passed away, on 9/11, which of course was also the subject of King of Staten Island in a certain respect, right? The movie he made a few years ago. And I guess kind of following that up, talking about how his mom is today, kind of funny, you know, um, making making a lot of jokes about people hypothetically having sex with his mom, including himself, just to like get the monkey off her back. It's kind of funny if a tad off-putting, I guess. I think the stuff I didn't like the most in this was when he was talking about how he thought maybe he was gay in his youth because he really liked Leonardo DiCaprio. Just didn't think anything was super intricate in any of that. It was just kind of like annoying. Like, I don't know. I didn't find it super funny. Like, it just kind of felt like random uh, conception. Like, I bet he just made it up for the sake of the special, but it wasn't really that funny. So, like, there's nothing really to let go. It just doesn't really land. I think what lands a bit better, which is probably the crassest of the jokes he make, is everything talks about the Make-A-Wish kid, right? And and he kind of concludes it, which I think is kind of funny, his POV, where he's talking about like wanting the kid to make sure the kid does in fact die, because he kind of opened up the kid and told him a lot of secrets, and he's obviously someone who gets a lot of media attention, so he wants to make sure those secrets die with this Make-A-Wish kid, right? But he kind of ends it with like a pedophile joke, but then he says, "Hey, I got molested in the past, so I'm allowed to say those things." That was actually like really funny, to be honest. Uh, Stuff with the stalker I thought was amusing, talking about his Crohn's disease and how people bring it up to him who also have Crohn's. Kind of grounding all this like in stuff we know about Pete and like the persona, the cult of personality of Pete Davidson and the guy with BDE and the guy with all the tabloid attention. Obviously he makes a lot of kind of offhand jokes and references as part of other jokes about all the girls he's with are always hot, right? And like that's kind of what I want from him. Just kind of lean into your persona and do that, because I'm not expecting like too much more. I'm not expecting anything too clever or intricate, and that's not really what you get here. The master bedroom stuff kind of basic as well, but broadly amusing. Yeah, I mean that's Pete Davidson, man. I would love him to do more movies. Like I said, looking forward to Wizards. Hopefully that comes out this year. And in general, I think he's like shown good promise in movies. Like I thought he was pretty good in King of Staten Island. I thought he was pretty good in Big Time Adolescence. Put him in more stuff. Lately he's done a lot of cameos as himself. He's done a lot of commercials. Right, the guy's rich, and the guy obviously has no problems in his dating life, as we know. Good for him in all those respects. But I would like him to take some more chances with movies and kind of go for that, because he's a star. And it'd be cool if he was a comedy movie star as well. Maybe he could help lift up the studio comedy space, which certainly needs some juice. We'll see. But yeah, as far as a special, it's kind of more of the same, you could say. It's just kind of, another Pete Davidson special. It doesn't really change your opinion of him, whether that was a positive or negative opinion. So I was amused at times. Didn't hate watching it by any means. Let me know, what did you think of Turbo Fonzarelli? Did you think it was a small, at least, step forward for Pete, but still kind of what you expect from him when it comes to stand-up? Let me know, and for more stand-up reviews, movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome to Nostalgia Dave here with a review of Echo, the latest Marvel Studios TV series, out now in full on Disney+, dropped in a binge drop. All 5 episodes were released, and yeah, it's the latest series. I think this is notable for a lot of reasons, coming at an interesting time for Marvel, as we've been talking about ad nauseum. Echo was dubbed the first Marvel Spotlight title from the MCU, namely a series or film that you don't really have any need to watch previous MCU properties to understand, which is, I think, in practice, a smart idea to introduce, because the MCU is so daunting with, 33 some odd movies, 8 TV series. Like we've seen a lot at this point, so I guess that idea makes sense. Now, I don't think it's actually that applicable to Echo, though, and that's kind of odd to me, and we can get into that. But yeah, I mean, this series was supposed to come out in November, got delayed, and we have a lot of like credible reporting about the troubled production, or at least troubled development with Echo, and I think on one hand, this is probably the last product of a bygone era at the MCU, honestly, where they kind of realized finally that you actually do need a traditional showrunner and Marvel trying to do a new model of TV development wasn't really working. So, take that for what you will. But yeah, this was a series that at one point was going to have more episodes, but they did a 5-episode binge drop beginning of January, really just to kind of feels like get this out of the way and move the heck on, and now the Marvel calendar is empty until the end of July when Deadpool 3 comes out, and lots riding on that, as we know. But yeah, I think with Echo, it doesn't really serve the Marvel Spotlight brand all too well, because this is a supporting character introduced in the Hawkeye 2021 Disney Plus series, and it makes a lot of references in its first episode to the events of Hawkeye, as well as the backstory to Echo, aka Maya Lopez, played by Alec Cox. And Echo the series, like Hawkeye, reintroduces or brings back, keeps it going, Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk, as portrayed by Vincent D'Onofrio. And yes, you don't need to have previously watched the Netflix Daredevil run, where D'Onofrio originated this take on the character. You don't need to watch that, but I feel like the Hawkeye stuff is kind of important to this. And also, this is a series that's clearly doing a lot of setup and legwork to set up future stuff. Namely, I'd imagine Daredevil Born Again, the series that is being completely reworked over at Marvel again due to development issues. And, you get Kingpin back. You see Jeremy Renner, both in Hawkeye, the series, like flashback, like reusing of scenes, as well as I think there's that one scene in the premiere that's new. We also get to see Charlie Cox's Daredevil in a pretty good fight scene also show back up. So it's not the most self-contained thing. It's certainly less self-contained than, say, Marvel's Moon Knight, which is truly a Marvel Spotlight brand, in my opinion. Nonetheless, that's just semantics. I think this is a show that it's just okay. Like, I wasn't offended by it, but I also didn't love it either. You can kind of tell it was a bit stitched together and, tried to put it together. And, I think it's, like I said, I think it's just all right. And I think a big issue with Echo is, the Echo character, which is a new character, and Cox is a new performer as an actor, ultimately it just feels like a bit of a side character because it's only been on TV to this point. I don't know if there's a lot of audience hype or investment for this, and I think the true heads that are really into Kingpin are going to be probably more interested in what's to follow with Daredevil. I don't know. Now, I think what's really good about Echo is that the Echo character, as established in the comics, is both a deaf character as well as a Native American indigenous character. And the way that's portrayed on the Echo series is not pandering or checking a box in any way. I think it's actually done to real genuine effect. American Sign Language, ASL, is a huge part of this series, but how it factors into the plot when it's like convenient for characters to get around bad guys, but also the connection between Echo and her other relationships, I think it's actually like done in a really good way. And of course, this series taking place primarily in Oklahoma on the Choctaw Reservation really feels, I think, culturally ingrained into that, modern day indigenous experience. And again, I don't feel like it's pandering. I think it actually does it in a pretty effective manner. It also helps that you have kind of a murderer's row of like known indigenous actors, with Graham Greene and Tantu Cardinal, two native legends in terms of actors, playing Echo's grandparents. You also have Chaske Spencer from Amazon Prime's The English as her uncle. I quite enjoyed seeing them. I think they're pretty good. You also have a lot of, basically every episode has an opening flashback, which is regarding the Echo's ancestors and how they kind of interact with, like, affecting her powers and whatnot. And I think on one hand, that kind of stuff, like, bogs down the series a little bit because it feels like very origin story, especially in the beginning half. But I think it's a bit more fulfilling, towards the end. Ultimately, again, it's a pretty low stakes series where it's 5 episodes, about 4 hours long. Doesn't really, I think, surprise you from any plot perspectives, but I think like one of those flashbacks, which was like the silent black and white, like Western one, that was really well done. And I think the, you know, family resonance stuff, particularly between Echo and her grandmother, I think that's done the best. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think this series would probably have been served better if it came out, like the immediate aftermath of Hawkeye. But after like the, 18 months Marvel has had, I mean, there's just a lot of apathy, and like this is a series that people might have actually been kind of excited about because, it's the first Marvel series to get a TVMA rating, the equivalent of an R-rated MCU thing. And it's certainly more violent, more grisly in the action than the past MCU. I think you see more blood, you see more like clear like death, and the opening fight scene you get in the first episode where Daredevil shows up, that's like really intense. I think the train set piece is pretty good. The stuff at the roller rink I think is probably the best of anything you get from like a visual action set piece. But I think there'd be a lot more excitement for that kind of thing. Again, kind of harkening back to the Netflix Marvel era. If this was coming at a different time, again, we're coming off Secret Invasion. We're coming off the Marvels being the lowest grossing MCU movie in history, with or without inflation. It's a tough time for audience investment, and a character like Echo, you know, a series about Echo or movie that for that matter, probably not getting greenlit at this time. This was greenlit at a different time when things were going, differently, and it was about more, more, more. And you look at the state of the MCU shows, I think this is better than a few of them, but it's not like as excellent as the high end stuff either. So yeah, I kind of understand why they wanted to get it out the door, but when the expectations are as low as they were coming in, I am a bit pleasantly surprised just because of how it handles, I think, some of the cultural stuff that sets it apart and makes it unique. So yeah, ultimately, I don't think there's a whole lot more to really latch onto about it. Daredevil Born Again, we know that show was, there's new hirings and it was basically being completely redone and reworked after what was previously filmed was not deemed good enough. And I think more than anything, the MCU probably going to make a lot less shows from what we understand, but they're actually going to make them in a more traditional manner with a full showrunner and a full writer's room and not just trying to create everything in editing and keeping the creative vision directly at the hands of the studio. So positive takeaway overall, but ultimately I think like we kind of know like whether this was amazing or not, like this wasn't going to change the fortunes of Marvel. Deadpool 3 will have I think important say in that matter, and certainly original stuff to come such as the Fantastic Four reboot will have a lot to say as well. But that's Echo. It's just okay. But yeah, let me know, what'd you think of it? Were you super hyped for it? I can't imagine too many people were super excited to check it out, but what'd you think? I mean, I think Wilson Fisk, as portrayed by D'Onofrio, I actually kind of enjoy the presence of like his hulking yet kind of sensitive portrayal. On the other hand, I feel like he might have been Wally pipped by the portrayal of Kingpin in Across the Spider-Verse on the animated front, so I'm not too sure. But yeah, let me know what you think of Echo. For more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia Dave here with a review of Fargo Season 5, out now in full on FX and Hulu. Fargo kind of returned with a more back-to-the-basics style approach with Season 5 after several switch-ups and changes with the previous season. And I think for the most part, this perhaps familiarity, this return to the Fargo vibe, if you will, pretty successful. Like, I think Fargo Season 5, I was hoping it would be at least on par with Fargo Season 3 as like the third best Fargo season. Hard to ask for the fifth season of anything to be as good as the really stellar first two seasons you got. We haven't touched that again, but that's okay. I don't think that was a realistic expectation. Fargo Season 5, I think, is pretty successful. You have good performances, good acting, and even if I think, plot mechanics might be a bit familiar to that, quote, Fargo vibe, Fargo formula, I actually think we had a pretty surprising, like, subversive ending, which I wasn't quite expecting, given that most of the rest of Season 5 wasn't quite on that level. So overall, I have a pretty favorable view of the season. I think right off the bat, just kind of like your central characters, your central pieces of casting, Juno Temple is really good as Dot. I think she's a really solid like lead protagonist, and Temple's able to really imbue, I think, the the fierce desire to be a survivor that Dot slash Nadine had, right? And Fargo season 5 tackles, I think, some really meaty stuff, and Temple and the Dot character are right in the middle of that. Namely, this show is really talking about toxic masculinity and where that intersects with domestic abuse, like very forthright in how it's handling that. Of course, I think there's a lot of grounding also in MAGA politics, just I think politics and like cultural sentiment just generally of like the current time. And of course, that's largely through the villain of the season, Roy Tillman, played by John Hamm. And I think Hamm, unsurprisingly, does a really good job playing this kind of insurrectionist, independent thinker, but also biblical rooted sheriff character who obviously has really regressive views on gender relations and race and the separation of church and state, all kinds of things, right? So Hamm, I think, did a really good job with that. I think this dynamic basically of Dot escaping from him before the show begins, and due to his own perversions, Tillman's obsession with getting his past wife back, even though he's already married with kids to somebody else, in this case, the daughter of the local militia that he's kind of shacked up with, right? I think all that worked really good. And then, of course, the other side of this coin is Dot's new family, which is that she married into the Lions, where you have Wayne, her husband, who played by David Rysdale. I thought Wayne actually really grew throughout this season. Like towards the end, once Wayne gets electrocuted briefly, loses his memory, and then starts to recollect himself. Everything with Wayne, I think just his cheerfulness, his genuine niceness, like the Minnesota nice, quote unquote, that we get explained to us in the first episode. It's honestly really charming, and I think his also obliviousness to a lot of stuff that's going on throughout this season is also just quite nice, quite fun. So I like that, and of course his mother, Lorraine, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, the evil queen, debt collector, multimillionaire person, right? Also a pretty fun character where she's a lot more villainous and cold in the beginning, but actually kind of comes around and welcomes Dot into the family by the time the finale turns. Really cool. I liked it. I think what's his name? Her Lorraine's fixer, Danish, played by Dave Foley with the eye patch. Nice presence. I think that's kind of like a archetype we've seen in Fargo before. Probably more effective in past seasons, but it was actually kind of tough when he gets axed off, gets whacked in the penultimate or second to last episode, third to last episode. I thought it was, I liked his presence. If anything, I think the characters that don't quite work, and this was definitely a huge problem with Fargo season 4, where you just had a really ballooned ensemble, and you weren't able to pay off a lot of characters, and a lot of stuff didn't feel fulfilling. I think in this case, that's clearly the case with Trooper Whit Farr, played by Lamorne Morris, who, of course, helps rescue Dot and save Dot from following the kidnapping in the premiere, and then all the way at the end, of course, he gets stabbed and killed by Tillman when he's trying to escape the FBI. And I think just Trooper Farr, he was just kind of a plot device. He didn't really have a lot of development as a character. There just wasn't a lot to him. He didn't have a whole lot to really do that wasn't in direct service of the plot elements revolving what Dot was up to episode to episode. So his death, the one good guy death in the finale, and of course Danish had already died. His death doesn't really land as well as I think it should have. If that was a character you had more connection to, that character that had more development. Also, I quite enjoyed Indira, the deputy who quickly starts investigating everything that's kind of going on, the strangeness of Dot's situation as she tries to pretend nothing's wrong with her life. Richa Morjani plays Indira. Also, Indira doesn't get a whole lot of payoff either. Like, I guess we're happy that she kind of gets to level up in life and work directly for Lorraine and make some more money, given that she had severe personal debt issues, right? And I guess it's like kind of like a full circle thing that she gets to make a big dent on getting ahead in life while working for the overseer of debt collection, right? A bit ironic, but like I don't know, like her husband, her deadbeat husband, played by Lucas Gage, in recurring role earlier in the season. He cheats on her, she kicks him out, and then she moves on and gets a new job, right? And it's like also not a whole lot there to that, right? Like I don't know. I just also felt like it was not the most fulfilling character arc, even if I enjoyed the presence, enjoyed the performance. Um, Joe Keery as Gator, uh, uh, Roy's kind of dipshit son, adult son. Really awesome casting. Was so nice to have Joe Keery playing like a dickhead again. Since Stranger Things season one, he's largely had that character on Stranger Things be turned into more of a good guy, right? It's fun to see him being a villain again, but this was a villain who was so incompetent that he kind of bordered on like uh, being comic relief for lots of the season. I really loved earlier in the season where Dot has to basically do her inner Kevin McAllister and Home Alone defend her house from would-be kidnappers, right? And just watching Gator and his goons get exposed at every turn, whether it's by Dot or whether it's by Munch, whatever's going on, I like that, and his arc, where Munch takes his eyes as retribution, um, his Roy throwing him aside completely, not feeling the use in him and his incompetence. Like, also, I don't know if there's a whole lot of payoff there. Like, he's just kind of going to jail, seemingly has repented a little bit. Whatever. I did enjoy the character and the performance. Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of like the core crew, right? Who am I forgetting? Oh, of course, Munch himself, right? Sam Spruill really doing, I think, a certainly unique for the season performance, where I think Munch as the heavy kind of introduced in a more familiar situation, right? As this kind of like unhinged, hard to contain, weapon of evil, chaos agent type character. But the introduction or revelation, in typical Fargo fashion of introducing some kind of spirituality, some kind of, um, not grounded aspect. There's always a little bit of that in a Fargo season. Finding out that old Munch is in fact this 500 plus year old sin eater, originally from Wales, centuries ago. That was quite the revelation. When that flashback stuff, I thought was really cool, really good. And then this all leads up to what made the finale so surprising, which was that Munch is able to seemingly put aside his previous code and his desire to fulfill debts, where Dot is able to basically charm him into opening up and getting something he was never able to get, which was, I guess, like sitting down and having a family meal, versus in the past when he was just invited to, eat the sin that wasn't even his and then take the blame off the shoulders of the community, things of that nature. It's a really delicate, like, final scene, because like you assume it's just going to go poorly and be like the last bit of bloodshed in the finale, given the fact that the shootout at the Tillman Ranch ends in the beginning of the episode. But no, like, it was quite the subversion, quite the flip, and I thought it was pretty enjoyable and definitely unique. Not what I expected. Again, given that most of Fargo season 5 was a bit more conventional. Uh, but yeah, I think overall successful season from Noah Hawley. I don't know if we're going to get a Fargo season 6. We're certainly not going to get it anytime soon, because Hawley is already well underway with his Alien series for FX, which has been cast. I believe it's already in production or about to go into production. So, then of course Alien Romulus, the film separate from that's coming out later this year. So, who knows? Maybe he'll go right into a second season of the Alien series. Obviously, it's IP they'd like to build up over at FX and under the Disney umbrella. So we'll see. But I think Fargo season 5, which again initially was supposed to come after Alien, and then they've actually moved this up in terms of the order of releasing of things. I think it proved that there's still plenty of juice, plenty of life in the Fargo series, and kind of like what True Detective season 4 is showing us right now, where having like a quote like anthology TV brand and then doing something basically completely new every time, even if maybe there's some tonal or setting uh, similarities season to season. I think it's like a really nice way to kind of thread the needle of needing to use IP to attract audience during the times we live in, as the peak TV era is crested, but also giving you so much room to do something new. And in the case of Fargo, that's still largely Noah Hawley being the creative force behind it. But yeah, I imagine Fargo season 6, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But let me know, what did you think about Fargo season 5? Did you find it overall pretty satisfying like me? How would you compare it to past Fargo seasons? Let me know what you thought of the whole thing or anything individual about it. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia Dave here with a review of I.S.S, the new science fiction thriller film from Gabriella Copperwaith, starring Ariana DeBose, also some other familiar faces like John Gallagher Jr., Chris Messina, Pilo Ashbake, and yeah, I think this was a movie that I didn't really know about until I started seeing some of the marketing, obviously kind of getting dumped here in January, but I actually think it's a pretty fun movie, a tight 90-minute space thriller film. I think it's pretty well made, well acted, well conceived, good set design. Kind of surprised me because, again, I didn't really have any expectations for this. I certainly didn't really know, wasn't really checking for it per se. The director, she's probably best known as the director of Blackfish, the orca whale documentary from a while back at this point. But, Ariana DeBose, star turn, her first big movie role post winning, supporting actress Oscar for West Side Story, her breakthrough movie role. So obviously wanted to check it out as a sci-fi fan. And I think, honestly, just the central like high concept premise of this movie, which is what if astronauts on the International Space Station, 3 Americans and 3 Russians, what if they find themselves at odds because down below on Earth a world war erupts between Russia and America? That's a dynamite presence, honestly. The ISS, the International Space Station, it's been a setting in movies in the past. I think of recently you had that kind of maligned sci-fi movie Life from about 4 or 5 years ago. Jake Gyllenhaal was in that. So it's been up there before, but yeah, I think that's like a really good premise, just because it immediately sets like high stakes thrills on all our characters here, and like the tension is quite palpable. It's easy to understand. It's stressful. Unsurprisingly, both sides of the station up there get the same orders from down below to take control of the station by any means necessary. And I think if there's a fault with this movie, it's probably just that there's some of the beats, the narrative beats, the perhaps you could say tropes with this type of story. It's a bit familiar, or at least a bit easy to foresee how things are going to go. Ariana DeBose's character, who's a new astronaut just arriving on the station, she's kind of portrayed as like the obvious heroine of the story. It's kind of clear from the jump. Despite all that, though, I thought like a lot of like the beats, even though I could see what was going on, and like I guess spoilers for some of the set pieces, but like, watching Messina go out and do the spacewalk and like knowing that he's about to be sabotaged and attempted to be murdered by the cosmonauts, like, it's coming, right? But still seeing it portrayed, especially I think because again, I think the movie looks really well done, and it's like so tight, economical in its screenplay, 90 minutes. You still enjoy it. Honestly, a really good comp would be For All Mankind, the Apple TV Plus series that just concluded its 4th season, which I just reviewed. It kind of gives you For All Mankind vibes, where like it's just really fun storytelling, and this tension, perhaps a little bit reminiscent of the For All Mankind season 2 finale in terms of Russian and U.S. tensions and high stakes and violence ensuing out in space. Of course, that was set on the moon, not the ISS. Nonetheless, I think it's done pretty good. The claustrophobia of the station, the also exoticness of the station, and like what it looks like and where astronauts can run and hide to and things like that. that's cool for the audience, and it's kind of reminiscent of like spending time on like a submarine. Not that different from like the Crimson Tide stuff going on in the second half of that movie, right? The set design does a really good job, and also like the portrayal of weightlessness, and no gravity, obviously looks pretty good. I imagine they use a lot of wires for this, but like it's pretty effective. And honestly, like the CGI portrayal of a Earth from above, looking down on Earth from space as nuclear wars beginning and seeing it on fire, like it's pretty polarizing pretty profoundly moving imagery. Even if it's obviously fake. So yeah, I mean, it was nice to see John Gallagher Jr. as well. I feel like he hasn't been doing too much on the movie front. I know he's a big theater actor these days, but yeah, I enjoyed the movie for what it was. Again, like I just appreciate that's like a tight genre thriller, and like as far as like the dumpuary standard goes, of movies that are just kind of thrown out in January, and of course these are not like platform award release movies that also come out this time. These are just kind of wide release studio movies that are just put out at this time because there's not really big expectations for critical or commercial performance or reception. And getting this and actually being pretty solid, that's a win for us in January with the movies. Honestly, just like Jason Statham's The Beekeeper, which just came out last week, also kind of being like a surprisingly like solid movie as well, and even the Mean Girls remake, like pretty good January, all things considered. And we're looking at a quiet first half of the year due to the strike delays on the movie front. So I think this is a positive development. Unfortunately, ISS is not looking like it's going to do too much on the box office front. I think it's just really an awareness issue, and it wasn't really marketed as a result. So unsurprising. But I think this movie has the potential to be a streaming discovery, at least in some form, for people down the road, because I actually think it's pretty good. But let me know, what'd you think of ISS if you've seen it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Fallen Leaves, the latest film from Aki Kaurismäki, the Finnish film legend, probably the most well-known film director out of Finland. This film was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Film Not in an English Language, and made the shortlist for Best International Feature Film at the Oscars, but kind of surprisingly was not nominated for the Oscar. Nonetheless, Fallen Leaves has got a lot of plaudits ever since it premiered back at Cannes last year, won the jury prize there, had a small limited release at the end of 23, and is now available in the US on Mubi, the small streaming service that you can access via Amazon. You can get a trial there, see the movie very easily. And yeah, this film, I in full disclosure, I've never seen a Kaurismäki film before. Of course, he has a lot of plaudits, a pretty lengthy filmography, but I was pretty excited about this, given other people were pretty into this film. And it's a pretty tight 81-minute, comedy, dramedy type story. And I thought it was pretty interesting. This stars Alma Poitsi as Ansa and Jussi Vitonen as Holappa. And it's really just a two-hander film. We're set in Helsinki, and we're spending time with our two characters. They're later in life, like in their 40s-ish, and they are living pretty lonely, solitary lives, working pretty dead-end jobs, just kind of getting by, living on the margins. Ansa has a 0-hour contract, stocking shelves at a grocery store. Very not good. And then Halopa is like a laborer on construction sites, basically, and actually is living at like a job provided dormitory alongside other workers. And you can kind of see like how they go about their business. Where like Ansa sometimes like turns on the radio and is listening to like developments about the early days of the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and she just turns off the radio eventually, just like sits there in silence. Does not have a lot going on with her life socially, personally. Does not seem very motivated, or at least not enthusiastic about things. And Halappa kind of seriously, again, like even more so than Ansa, who at least has her own apartment. Halappa's very much just kind of getting by, scraping by. And they end up connecting at this karaoke bar, which is a pretty awesome scene, I have to say, where Halappa's friend, this older guy, tries to hit on Ansa's friend, goes up there and sings. It's a pretty good karaoke scene. I liked it a lot. And they end up connecting, Ansa and Halopa, and they decide to eventually like meet up and go on a date. And they go to the movies and they see Jim Jarmusch's film The Dead Don't Die from, what was that, 2017 or so. And you actually see like a brief few scenes of that movie, which is kind of funny. And then Ansa gives Halopa her phone number written on a piece of paper. Has never told him her name though. It's been a very like cool, like steely, like connection, right? As they don't say a whole lot to each other, but clearly are enjoying the company. And Jalapa like immediately loses the number. It's the paper just like falls out of his pocket, and he doesn't know her name, has no way of looking her up, and they eventually find a way to reconnect by just waiting at the old movie theater they met at, and hoping they can run into the other. But they eventually disconnect after a second date when Ansa sees Jalapa drinking from a flask at her apartment when she invites him over for dinner. And it's kind of like the coming to a head of like what's been going on with Jalapa, who you see him often like drinking, like taking sips out of a flask or a small like fifth of liquor, he has in his coat pocket. And he gets fired from multiple jobs. He gets fired from the first job for failing a breathalyzer test and being caught drinking on the job at the other one, and gets kicked out of his work-provided dormitory and is sleeping on benches. As you can tell, things are not going well, and yet they're eventually able to connect towards the end. And I think it's a pretty interesting movie for what it says about loneliness and lost connection, or just a desire for some kind of connection and kinship, because again, these are people that barely have their shit together. But not necessarily are bad people, by any means, but just have find themselves in some tougher circumstances. And I think the movie, maybe I could say it starts a hair slow, like you kind of pick up where it's going and it doesn't quite progress quickly enough. But it's also filmed in an interesting way where it feels like very like gray and like blue and like the sadness sense. And when I was watching, I was like, wow, this does not paint Helsinki in a nice light, even though Helsinki and Finland are both wealthy places, wealthy nation, prosperous place, and yet that's not what you're seeing here. And people that have seen other Kaurismäki films have described this as kind of like a spiritual continuation of his proletariat trilogy in terms of the thematic interests that Kaurismäki has with his films. And it's I think this does a pretty good job of portraying people living kind of on the edges, but that's not really what the movie is about, right? So pretty cool. Shout out Fallen Leaves, available now on Mubi if you're in the U.S. And yeah, I'd say unfortunate that it wasn't nominated for the Oscar. It would have been cool to see Finland recognized there after it's been some time. Nonetheless, I think people will seek this out. There's a bit of anticipation and hype around it as far as, foreign films being released in the US goes. So let me know, how'd you feel about Fallen Leaves? What'd you think of it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here with my 2024 Oscar nominations reaction. Gonna go through all the Oscar nominees. Gonna go through the snubs, the surprises, and yes, we had some surprises. A lot to get into here. Of course, if you missed it, I did my predictions for the Oscar nominations last week. I did pretty good, but there was definitely some stuff I did not foresee. And of course, I'll be doing my predictions for who I think will win in a little bit. Obviously, the Oscars are not until March 10th, so the predictions will be a little bit later than now. Nonetheless, a lot to get into with these nominations. Starting off the bat, I think let's start with Best Picture, because Best Picture actually was probably the chalkiest, most straightforward category of all. It directly matches the Producers Guild Award nominations as well. And I think this happened just because there was really no other films rising up to take a spot here. So your 10 Best Picture nominees are American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. What movie could have really got in there at this point, the way award season, the way things have been going? I mean, May, December, All of Us Strangers, The Color Purple. Those are the only movies that really come to mind. And, it never really happened for All of Us Strangers at all. The Color Purple also clearly was a soft awards film, and same thing for May, December. So it kind of by default became this group of 10. And I really have no beef with this. I mean, my, 4 of my top 5 movies of the year are in this list. Like, I feel great about this. So Best Picture, really no qualms about it. Obviously, we know it's Oppenheimer's race to lose right now, but Oppenheimer also leading the field here, the most nominated film of the day, unsurprising, with 13, followed by Poor Things with 11, Killers with 10, Barbie with 8, Maestro with 7, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, and Zone of Interest with 5, shout out Ridley Scott's Napoleon, 3 Oscar noms. And then the last movies with multiple noms, with 2 noms each. You have The Creator, Mission Impossible 7, Nyad, Past Lives, and Society of the Snow. A nice grouping there. So let's get into some of the surprises here. So from Best Picture, let's move to Best Director. Okay, so Best Director, we felt very confident that Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, and Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon would all be nominated. And they were. Here's where the surprises begin. Also nominated for Best Director, we have Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall and Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. We've often talked about the international nature, composition of the Film Academy and how that has changed and is newer more recently than it was in the past, and we're often seeing this bubble up in the Best Director category, where people like Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round, and Powell Palakowski for Cold War, and Ryusuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car get nominated for Best Director as international directors. And I was curious how this would go this year because Yorgos Lanthimos, of course, famously a Greek man. I was wondering if that would coalesce and he would be our representative of world cinema. And you'll notice Greta Gerwig is the big shock here, not nominated for Barbie because both Glazer and Triet got in. I predicted that. I thought Triet would get in as that number 5. Alexander Payne alongside Gerwig was nominated for The Holdovers and Best Director at the DGA, the Directors Guild Award. And I was feeling Payne would drop out and Glazer took that spot with The Zone of Interest. But I was not expecting Justine Triet to also jump in and take away from Greta, or at least have that happen in tandem like that. So that is definitely a big surprise and a bit of a hit there for Greta. Nonetheless, it's not all bad news for Greta Gerwig, who becomes the first director, male or female, to have their first 3 solo directorial films all nominated for Best Picture. That's Lady Bird, Little Women, and now Barbie. Huge accomplishment. Also this year, with Best Picture, on the female front, it's the first time ever we've had 3 films nominated for Best Picture that are helmed by women. Of course, that's Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, and Past Lives. So, tough individual accolade there for Greta, but overall, I think things look pretty good there. Yeah, and again, just a big shock. I have really no beef with any of those selections. Again, I was picking Justine Triet. I'm just kind of shocked that Greta didn't get in, given how much respect and esteem she has as one of our newest, directorial auteurs. Nonetheless, it happened. Looking at Best Actor here, again, we knew that a few of these were definitely going to happen. Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. Felt really good about those. Also felt very good about Bradley Cooper and Maestro. Those 4 did, in fact, get nominated for Best Actor. The last spot went to Coleman Domingo for Rustin for his portrayal as Bayard Rustin in the Netflix biopic film. And there was definitely some, buzz that could happen, as Leonardo DiCaprio notably got snubbed, quote unquote, by the SAG Award nominations. And of course, it never really happened for Andrew Scott or All of Us Strangers. So in fact, that is what happened, where Leo did not get nominated and Coleman Domingo did instead. And it's a good field. I just wish Rustin was like a better movie. It's a pretty staid, bland, doesn't look too great film, but Domingo's really good, and I think it's a kind of a sick nom, honestly, just because he's someone who's been good for a while. He's also very good in The Color Purple this year. He's really good on Euphoria, people might remember. He's been great forever, and it's a really nice recognition for him. So I don't have too much of a problem with it, given Leo's been nominated many times. He's already won. And the Killers campaign clearly was not really running Leo as who they wanted to win. Of course, they were more coalescing behind Lily Gladstone, who got nominated for Best Actress, unsurprisingly, alongside Carey Mulligan in Maestro, Emma Stone in Poor Things, and Sandra Huller in Anatomy of a Fall. So those 4, everyone felt pretty good about. We also felt pretty good about Margot Robbie in Barbie being nominated for Best Actress, but she was not nominated. I'm pretty surprised about this. And in her place, you have Annette Bening for Nyad as Diana Nyad, another Netflix biopic film performance. Netflix really pulling through here. And this is a bit of a shock, I have to say. Margot still gets a nomination as one of the producers of Barbie in the Best Picture category. She's someone who's been nominated before, of course, but it's a tough beat, tough. Comedies often struggle at the Oscars, unfortunately. And that's tough just because, again, Annette Bening as Naiad, it's not what I wanted to see, quote unquote. And, I was really pulling for Greta Lee in Past Lives. I didn't think it was going to happen. It didn't, unfortunately. But I think Margot Robbie not being nominated Best Actress really stands out when you can contrast this with what happened with Best Supporting Actress, where America Ferrera did get nominated for her role in Barbie. To pick America Ferrera but not Margot, that's very perplexing to me, to be honest. Not what I would have done. So Best Supporting Actress, you have Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers, Jodie Foster for Naiad, Emily Blunt for Oppenheimer, and Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple. Felt pretty good about those four. America Ferrera as Barbie is kind of the big surprise where she was in the mix, but I had predicted perhaps Penelope Cruz could get in for Ferrari after her SAG nom. And obviously Julianne Moore was still in the mix for May December as well. Nonetheless, Ferrera does get in, but it's the Ferrera over Robbie choice, even though that's not exactly what the choice is, but that's what it feels like. That's what really stands out to me about this. So again, a bit of a shock here. And then looking at Best Supporting Actor, again, you had people that you knew would be there, right? Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer, Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon, Ryan Gosling for Barbie. Felt good about those. Mark Ruffalo does get in for Poor Things. I wasn't too confident about that one. And then Sterling K. Brown got in for American Fiction, which I had predicted, I was happy about, but, was not a lock. And as a result, this means that Willem Dafoe did not get in for Poor Things. Ruffalo got it instead. I think that was the right choice. It's a better, more newer, unique performance from Ruffalo, whereas this was Dafoe doing things you've seen him do before, albeit very good. I love Dafoe in Poor Things, but Ruffalo's a better nom, I think. And I'm happy about that. I didn't actually see that one coming, so that's good. And then Sterling K. Brown getting in for American Fiction is amazing. Unfortunately, what this means is Charles Melton did not get in for May December. Again, May December did not have the Oscar nom day people would have thought, right? No Alexander Payne, no Best Picture nomination, no Julianne Moore, but no Charles Melton is a big hit because, you remember a few months ago, people were saying, is Charles Melton the dark horse in this? Could he knock off RDJ? No, he doesn't even get nominated. Big hit. Also a big hit for the Hollywood minting new movie stars thing because Melton, obviously, seeing him on the awards circuit on the red carpet, that guy has the look and has the talent, and that is a tough beat for him, unfortunately. So that's acting. We'll just kind of go through some other categories here, go through all of them. Animated feature, The Boy and the Heron from Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, unsurprisingly there alongside Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Felt very safe about those. Elemental from Pixar does get through. Nimona from Netflix does get through. The surprise, I guess you could say, quote unquote, is Robot Dreams getting in. This is a film, I haven't seen this film yet, but this is a Spanish-French animated film, and it's kind of reminiscent of when I Lost My Body got nominated, I think 3 or 4 years ago. More like auteurist, non-mainstream animated fare getting in. Think of Flea as well, that Neon release. They're releasing Robot Dreams. And what else could have taken that spot? Mario, not critically liked despite the big box office. Wish, same thing on Disney front. Then I guess Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the only other one that I think people were predicting. I didn't have a good feel for that. I think I went with TMNT in my predictions, but cool. I'm definitely going to seek out Robot Dreams. Best International Feature Film, also a bit of a surprise here. Unsurprisingly, is 2 nominations. The Zone of Interest from Jonathan Glazer in the United Kingdom. Obviously, it's going to be here. It was nominated for Best Picture. No shock, it's going to win. And then Society of the Snow from Spain and director J. Bayona out on Netflix. Netflix getting that one through, unsurprisingly. And also Society of the Snow getting a second nomination for makeup and hairstyling, which I think is quite justly earned. The surprise here, though, is the other nominations. You have The Teacher's Lounge from Germany, Perfect Days from Japan, and Io Capitano from Italy. What that means is Fallen Leaves from Finland and Kaurismäki did not get through. That's a bit of a shock. And also The Taste of Things from France did not get through. What a bad beat for France. They picked The Taste of Things over Anatomy of a Fall, and Taste of Things doesn't even get nominated, whereas Anatomy of the Fall is nominated in 5 categories, including Best Picture. Would have ran away with this dub if it had been there, but no, now France gets no glory in this category. Tough beat there. Io Capitano gets through after getting Globe nominated for film non-English language. Perfect Days from Vin Vendors in Japan, which I did pick, is there. But yeah, I think no Fallen Leaves and no The Taste of Things. That's a surprise and international feature. Let's see. Best Original Screenplay, we have Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Maestro, May December, Past Lives. That's actually like very chalk. There really was nothing else I think that could have been picked there once the Barbie designation happened, where Barbie was determined to be an adapted screenplay, not original. Like, your other choices for original screenplay this year are like films like Asteroid City or Saltburn or Air, which those movies just never really had much of an awards push or awards momentum. So no surprise with original screenplay. And then adapted screenplay, you have American Fiction, shout out Cord Jefferson getting nominated there, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Zone of Interest. I mean, what you could have picked here is one key omission. Killers of the Flower Moon, not nominated for adapted screenplay. That is a bit of a shock. Nonetheless, Killers got a lot of nominations. That's tough though, man. Big category. I don't know what you take away. I guess you take away Zone of Interest because that's more of a directorial, visual, sonic effort than much of a screenplay. That's probably what I would have done there. But nonetheless, that's a shock, I guess you could say. Documentary feature film. I just want to note that 20 Days in Mariupol is nominated there, the documentary about the Ukraine war. I had picked 20 Days in Mariupol to get into international feature film as well as doc. It didn't, but I guess, spreading the wealth a little bit. It's in the doc category. Makes some sense there. Also in that category, To Kill a Tiger, The Eternal Memory, Four Daughters, and Bobby Wine. I'm going to ignore the shorts. Just not a shorts guy. Cinematography, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things. All pretty chalk. But then El Conde, Ed Lachman's cinematography for El Conde on Netflix, a Pablo Larraín movie. That's a shock. That's a pretty cool nomination. Editing, we have Anatomy of Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things. And that's probably your top 5 best picture ranking right there. That's how we usually think about editing, right? Costume design, we have Barbie, Killers, Napoleon, nice nom, Oppenheimer, Poor Things. Production design, Barbie, Killers, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things. Same exact thing with costume. Makeup and hairstyling, you have Golda, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Society of the Snow. I'm pretty hyped about Best Sound, The Creator, Maestro, Mission Impossible 7, Oppenheimer, and The Zone of Interest. Loaded category, all very deserving. And then visual effects, you have The Creator, Godzilla -1, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Mission Impossible 7, and Napoleon. Really like that The Creator got 2 noms here, then Godzilla -1 got into visual effects. I think either one of those is an excellent choice for visual effects, and they're both shining examples of what can be achieved in filmmaking with smaller budgets, not $200+ million Hollywood budgets. That's really, I think, great recognition. I hope that's a sign of things to come. Original score, you have American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, John Williams extending his record with his 54th nomination at the Oscars. Killers of the Flower Moon, where Robbie Robertson, posthumous nomination. Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson, and Poor Things. So pretty good category there. And Best Original Song, you have, The Fire Inside from Flaming Hot, another Diane Warren original song nomination. This keeps happening. It's probably one of the most ridiculous Oscar traits is Diane Warren getting nominated for Best Original Song in songs people don't know, often in movies people haven't seen. Flaming Hot's a little bit more popular in some of her past films she's been nominated for, but it's kind of ridiculous. I'm Just Ken from Barbie, that's there. That's probably the winner. It Never Went Away from American Symphony, John Batiste's song. Wakshawazi, Song for My People from Killers of the Flower Moon. And then What Was I Made For from Barbie, Billie Eilish, and Phineas song. What that means is Peaches from Mario did not get in. Honestly, I thought that would have been a nice pick because Peaches, like I'm Just Ken, are actually songs that are in the movie and actually matter to the film and how the film works versus just a song that you play in the beginning or a song you play at the end credits. It's a pretty dumb category usually, but when you have a song like I'm Just Ken, I think you have to pick it to win because it actually matters to the film. And yeah, I think that's all the categories, right? Did I miss anything? I did not. No, that is all. So yeah, big takeaways. Gerwig out in Best Director. Big shock. Justin Triet and Jonathan Glazer in. Best Actress, you have Margot Robbie out, but somehow American Ferrera is still in for Best Supporting Actress. A bit of a tough thing to grab your head around there. Best Picture went chalk. There was just really no other upstart pick to really break through here. Coleman Domingo does get in for actor. Yeah, I think that's kind of the big stuff here. Annette Bening being the one to knock out Robbie, tough. Some cool surprises like El Conde getting nominated, Society of the Snow getting a second nom. Happy about Sterling K. Brown getting through. Charles Melton, bad beat from that guy. Yeah, so I'll be doing my best picture, my full Oscar predictions for all the categories in early March before the Oscars happen. And make sure you let me know what you think of these nominations. What are your biggest snubs and surprises? Who are you rooting for? Of course, make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, because I will be back with those predictions. And yeah, for more movie reviews as well, subscribe. I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, a lot of things I'm excited to get into. Masters of the Air, the new Apple TV Plus World War II series about fighter pilots with Caleb Turner and Barry Keoghan and Austin Butler. This is kind of the spiritual successor to the Band of Brothers and the Pacific. Can't wait. We also have the start of Expats on Amazon Prime Video from Lulu Wang, starring Nicole Kidman. We have Ava DuVernay's new film Origin, Benny the Butcher's major label debut, new album, and oh yeah, 2024 Grammy predictions. Let's go. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist updated every week. Let me know what's good, and I'll see you next week.